They said, "Let's keep Christmas small this year, just us four." So I ate alone, in a quiet apartment that still smelled faintly of furniture polish and unopened mail. My daughter didn't even look up when she said it, just stirred her tea and moved on. And I didn't say anything, not about the meal, not about the silence, not about the apartment I had just sold for $6.2 million the day before. Their loss. It had snowed lightly that morning. Not enough to cover the ground, just enough to make everything look like it had been dusted with powdered sugar. I sat in the kitchen nook of the little place I had rented with my own name, my own money, and my own signature. No one offered to help unpack. No one even asked where I was going. They assumed I'd be around, like leftover tinsel after New Year's, always in the way, always needing to be swept up eventually. The funny thing is, I had bought the roast a week earlier. I had wrapped it in foil, seasoned it just how John used to like it, rosemary and garlic rubbed in deep, and I'd tucked it into the freezer behind their vegan ice cream and pre-cut smoothie packs. I was going to make Christmas dinner, my last one in that house. But then they decided, without even a whisper in my direction, that the four of them would do something simple this year. Just them. A nuclear Christmas, Claire called it. Her word, not mine. I sat there that morning, the 25th of December, looking out at a quiet street in the Upper West Side, holding a chipped mug I'd brought from the old place. I hadn't unpacked much, just essentials, some clothes, my knitting, a few papers. The documents were still in the manila folder, tucked inside my nightstand drawer. Sale finalized, wire transfer complete, new owner in place. The apartment I had held on to for years, the one Claire never asked about, was gone, and no one knew but me. The day stretched long and strange. I didn't cry. I didn't call anyone. I heated up soup from a can and lit a single candle on the kitchen table. For ambiance, I told myself, not for loneliness. There were no gifts, no stockings, no noise. Just the hum of the radiator and the occasional car horn outside. I thought about calling my sister in Florida, but we hadn't talked much since the funeral. She would ask questions. I didn't want to answer any. At exactly 4:16 p.m., I got a group text from Claire. "Merry Christmas. Hope you're having a restful day. We'll swing by tomorrow to bring you leftovers. XO." Leftovers. Imagine that. I didn't respond. What was I supposed to say? That I'd eaten soup from a mug and sat in the quiet with a $6.2 million secret folded neatly in a drawer next to my pajamas? No. I just closed the message and put the phone face down. Then I stood up, turned off the light, and sat in the dark for a while, sipping cold tea. I wasn't sad. I wasn't angry. I was just done. That was the thing Claire never understood. My silence wasn't surrender. It was storage. I was keeping the truth until I was ready to use it. And now I was. It started the year after John died. Claire came by the condo with her husband and a tray of lemon bars that she said her mother-in-law had made. She stood in the entryway, too bundled for spring, shifting on her feet like she had somewhere better to be. "You shouldn't be alone," she said. "It's not healthy." I had just finished vacuuming. The place smelled like Murphy oil soap and the carnations I'd bought myself. I didn't answer right away. I didn't trust her silences, even then. "We've got room," she added. "The basement suite's finished. It's got its own bath." She said it like a kindness, like she was offering me space, not containment, not control. John had only been gone 8 months. I was still sleeping in his flannel shirts. But loneliness is a cunning thing. It doesn't knock loud. It seeps in through the windows and settles in the corners. So I said yes. I packed what mattered. The photo albums, the marriage license, John's watch. I still couldn't bring myself to wind. I left the piano. It hurt too much. Claire said she'd help with the move, but sent movers instead. Young men who wrapped everything in plastic and asked no questions. That was the first time I heard her say it, under her breath, when she thought I wasn't close enough to hear. She just needs structure. Not love, not company. Structure. The basement suite was nice, in a sterile way. Beige carpet, clean lines, a half window that stared out at a retaining wall. I put up curtains, hung a few framed photos. It wasn't home, but it was a place to sleep. And at first, it was fine. I made tea. I offered to cook. I kept out of the way. Then came the rules. No shoes upstairs. No toast after 9. The smell lingered. No cable news during breakfast. I complied. I always complied. I didn't ask questions when my books disappeared from the shelves, when my throw blankets were replaced with ones that matched the aesthetic, when Claire's tone shifted from cheerful to clipped. You don't need to worry about that. We've got it. No, you just rest. It sounded kind, but it felt like being erased. Over time, my role became clearer. I was to be helpful, quiet, present, but not participating. A soft echo in the corners of their curated life. I watched my grandson grow from behind a phone screen. He's overstimulated, Claire would say when I tried to play peekaboo or sing lullabies. It's a Montessori thing. So I stopped trying. Then came the dinners. Every week they invited friends, tech couples, parents from daycare, people who spoke in marketing phrases and drank low-sulfite wine. I'd be upstairs in the kitchen, setting the table, refilling the ice. No one ever asked if I wanted to sit down. No one looked surprised when I disappeared back downstairs before dessert. Once, one of the guests asked who lived in the basement. "Oh, that's just my mum," Claire said, laughing. "She likes her space." Like I was a pet, a ghost. That night, I opened the drawer where I kept the deed. The condo, the one John and I bought in 1987 for $243,000 when we couldn't afford a 2-bedroom but made it work anyway. The papers were still crisp, my name on every line. Sole owner since 2009. No mortgage, no liens, no one else's business. I ran my fingers along the edge of the folder and then closed it gently. Not yet, I thought. But soon. Because even the most patient women have a line, and I had just seen mine. I began to vanish in stages. At first, it was just my voice. Claire started answering for me before I could respond. If someone asked what I thought of a movie, or whether I liked a certain restaurant, she'd smile and say, "Oh, she's not into that kind of thing." As if she knew, as if I didn't have preferences, only tendencies. Then it was my habits. She replaced my kettle with a sleeker one, electric, more efficient. My loose-leaf teas were tossed in favor of sachets with labels that promised clarity, detox, youth. I said nothing. I drank her tea. It tasted like cardboard. Next came my schedule. She began waking me earlier on weekends, claiming we should be up and moving. It's good for the brain. She'd hand me a to-do list with polite bullets. Wipe down the counters, sweep the deck, fold towels. "You like being useful, right?" she'd say, already walking away. I did like being useful. I just didn't like being expected. Expected to earn my keep. Expected to disappear once the job was done. I was 74 years old and folding towels like an employee, smiling like it was my idea. One evening, I made pot roast, the kind John used to love, with pearl onions and carrots so soft they melted under your tongue. Claire had been working late, the baby had been fussy, and I thought, this will help. This will feel like home again. She came in, looked at the table and frowned. "Oh, I wasn't planning on red meat tonight. I said nothing. I just nodded and quietly covered the dish. Her husband, Greg, sat down anyway. He didn't say much, just served himself a portion and ate quickly. He thanked me on his way out, eyes tired, shoulders slumped. I wondered, not for the first time, whether he too was surviving a curated life. After dinner, Claire pulled me aside. "I appreciate the gesture," she said, voice smooth like varnish. "But next time, maybe check with me first. Our family's routines matter." Our family. As if I was not part of it. That night, I lay awake in the basement suite, staring at the ceiling and counting the small indignities. I wasn't being hurt. I wasn't being hit or yelled at. I was being erased, bit by bit. The kind of pain you can't show bruises for. There was a spider in the corner of the ceiling. I watched it spin for a while. It didn't rush. It knew what it was doing. The next morning, I called the building manager of my old condo. Just to check, I told myself. Just to ask. "Still in great shape," he said cheerfully. "We've had interest? You planning to sell soon?" "Yes," I said, before I could think. Then I hung up, and I smiled. It was the first real smile I'd felt in months, the kind that didn't need anyone's permission, rules. That's what it all came down to. No scented candles, they irritated the baby. No old-fashioned shows on TV. They gave the wrong impression about gender roles. No sitting in the living room unless it was family time. I was family, but not in the way they meant. Even my music, the quiet piano CDs I used to play while knitting, had been replaced by silence or podcasts Claire said were more stimulating. She once handed me a pair of headphones and said, "Here, this is less disruptive." Disruptive? As if my very presence rippled the air too loudly. So I stopped playing music. I stopped lighting candles. I stopped suggesting things. When I offered to bake, Claire would sigh and remind me they were watching Sugar. When I tried to read to the baby, she'd gently remove the book and say, "We're trying to limit passive input." One afternoon, she sat me down with a list, not a conversation, a list. "Just to make sure we're aligned," she said brightly. It included things like no visitors without notice, no cooking after 8 p.m., no loud conversations on the phone, no changing the thermostat. At the bottom, it said, "This helps us all feel more at ease." I looked at the page. Then I looked at her. She was already tapping her phone, already halfway back into her curated life. I folded the paper neatly and slipped it into my knitting basket. Not because I planned to follow it, but because I planned to remember. Greg rarely spoke. When he did, it was with a kind of careful resignation, like a man who'd learned not to upset the balance of his own home. He thanked me for dinner once, after Claire had already gone upstairs. Just the two of us in the kitchen, the baby monitor humming on the counter. "Thanks for everything," he said quietly. I nodded. I didn't know what else to say. I wasn't doing it for thanks. I wasn't even sure anymore why I was doing it. Habit, maybe. Hope. Something older than logic. The day I realized I was no longer living in their house, but in my own shrinking bubble inside it, was a Tuesday. Claire had asked me not to hang my laundry outside anymore. Said it looked cluttered from the street. I'd always used the back patio. I liked the sun on the sheets, the smell, the quiet. "It's just not the image we're going for," she said. I smiled, nodded, went downstairs and packed the clothespins away. Later that night, I opened my nightstand drawer. The papers were still there. Deed, appraisal, tax receipts. I ran my finger down the edge of the manila folder. I had held on to that condo for over 3 decades. It was rent-controlled, in my name, fully paid off. worth far more now than when John and I scraped every penny together to buy it. Claire never once asked. She thought I had nothing, that I needed her, that I was lucky to be kept. But I had a line, and she was drawing it for me, one petty rule at a time. The condo had sunlight. I remembered that most. Mornings when the light spilled across the kitchen floor like it was searching for something, warm and golden and quiet. I used to sit there with my tea and crossword, John humming as he shaved. He never solved the clues, just liked the sound of me thinking aloud. We bought that place in 1987 with loan papers that made our hands sweat. Claire was 6 then, with knees always scraped and questions always ready. The condo wasn't big. 2 bedrooms, 1 bath, a galley kitchen. But it had good bones, John said. Like us. After he died, I stayed. I replaced faucets, painted trim, learned how to call the super without sounding unsure. It became mine in a way even our marriage home never had. Quiet, lived in, stubborn, like me. Claire never liked visiting. She said it smelled like dust and old books. She'd wrinkle her nose and say, "You should move to something more modern." But she never asked about the deed, never wondered why I hadn't sold, because to her, I was just surviving. I didn't tell her the truth. I kept it in my name, paid the taxes, fixed the roof, updated the boiler. Not because I planned to go back, but because I never planned to be disposable. I didn't think I'd sell it, not for years. But silence changes things. One evening, Claire hosted a dinner. Friends from work, loud and sharp with cologne and confidence. I helped set the table, wiped glasses twice, stayed invisible. After the 3rd glass of wine, someone asked, "Who made the casserole?" Claire laughed. "Oh, that's just my mum. She loves feeling useful." They chuckled. I smiled. My hands stayed still. She loves feeling useful. I folded the napkins and reminded myself that I had power. Not the loud kind. Not the kind that demands. The quiet kind. The kind that comes from knowing exactly what you own and exactly what you no longer owe. That night, I called a realtor. Her name was Maggie. Young, professional, sounded surprised when I said I wanted a private listing. "No signs, no open houses," I told her. "Just discreet offers. Cash preferred." "Yes, ma'am," she said. I met her 2 days later in a small cafe near the park. I handed her the documents. She looked them over, her eyebrows rising just a little. "This is a gem," she said. "You'll have offers in hours." "I know," I replied. "Just don't tell anyone who owns it." She nodded. Understood. By Friday, 3 offers had arrived. One was from a young couple, another from a developer, the third, a woman about my age, newly divorced, who wanted a place to start over. I chose her. Not for the money. They were all offering above asking. But for the way she looked at the floor plan, like she could already see her future inside it. I signed the acceptance papers on a Sunday morning. Then I went back to Claire's house, folded laundry, made soup, waited. The condo was no longer mine. But I didn't feel loss. I felt light. I didn't pack like someone leaving. I folded things as if I were simply cleaning, a sweater here, a blouse there. Slipped my knitting needles into their cloth roll, tucked the folder with the sale documents at the bottom of the suitcase beneath an old flannel shirt of John's. Claire was out with the baby. Greg had driven her. I had the house to myself, just for a few hours, just long enough. I didn't leave a note. Not then. That would come later, carefully placed where she wouldn't see it until after. The cab pulled up at 1:45 in the afternoon. I rolled my bag down the back steps. Quiet wheels, soft gravel. The gate clicked once behind me. That was the only sound. I didn't look back. The new apartment was already waiting, rented through a broker who knew how to keep things quiet. A furnished one-bedroom on the 5th floor, with west-facing windows and a little balcony just big enough for potted mint and a small table. No one asked about my family. No one asked why I paid the first 6 months in full. The super handed me the keys and said, "You'll like it here. Quiet building. No drama." "Perfect," I said. I unpacked slowly, set John's picture on the dresser, hung one scarf on the back of a chair, just to soften the lines. That night, I boiled pasta, drank a glass of wine, and watched the city settle into evening. No one texted. No one noticed. The next morning, I went back once, just for a minute. Claire was still at work. I knew her routine down to the hour. I walked through the side gate, used my copy of the back door key, and stepped into the kitchen one last time. It smelled like lemon spray and something burnt. A tea towel hung crooked on the oven handle. I placed the note on the counter, right beside the bamboo tray where she kept the baby's supplements, folded it twice. Nothing dramatic. Just 5 lines. "Claire, I'm fine. The condo is sold. I've moved out. Please don't contact me unless you have something kind to say. I need quiet now." "Mum," I locked the door behind me, dropped the key in the mailbox, and left. It took 36 hours for her to call. The first time, I let it ring. The second, I muted it. By the fourth, I turned the phone off entirely. When I turned it back on, there were 11 missed calls. 2 from Greg. None from a number I didn't recognize. She didn't leave a voicemail. She never did. Claire didn't like leaving traces. She liked control. 2 days later, a package arrived at my new door. No return address. Inside was a photo, me and Claire and the baby on his first birthday. She had written nothing, just the image. I placed it back in the envelope and filed it away. Later that evening, I got an email from the realtor. Funds had cleared. Final paperwork was filed. The condo was officially out of my name. I read that line twice. Then I made tea. Mint. Sat on my balcony with a blanket over my knees, listened to the city hum below. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel like someone who needed permission to exhale. The email came at 8:42 a.m. sharp. Subject line: Urgent. Property transfer discrepancy. Sender: Claire M. Whitfield. She had used her work email, always professional when she panicked. The body was short. "Mum, I don't know what you think you're doing, but this is serious. We need to talk. Please call me back immediately. There's still time to undo this." Undo what? I wondered. My leaving, my silence, my ownership. I didn't respond. Instead, I forwarded the message to my lawyer, the same one who handled the sale, just in case. Then I closed my laptop and went for a walk. Nothing long, just around the block. The air smelled like rain on brick and hot pretzels from the cart at the corner. I passed a florist trimming sunflowers, and for a moment I remembered John buying them for me once, years ago, after a fight about nothing. Back at the apartment, there was a voicemail. Claire's voice, tight and controlled. "You're being unfair. We didn't push you out. You chose this. We need that space now. And the condo, Mum, it was supposed to be for the family. You can't just disappear like this." But I could. And I had. That afternoon, Maggie, the realtor, called to say the new owner had received the keys. "She cried," Maggie said. "Said it felt like breathing again." I closed my eyes, nodded. "It always did," I said. I didn't hear from Claire again for a week, not directly. But Maggie forwarded another message, this time from a lawyer who claimed to represent a concerned family member disputing the recent property sale. He had no standing, no evidence. The paperwork was clean. "She's grasping," Maggie said. "We're not worried." I wasn't either. That night, I lit a candle. Not a scented one, just plain beeswax, steady and silent. I set it in the center of the table and sat with it for a long while, watching the flame bend gently in the draught from the window. My phone buzzed again. Greg. Just a text this time. "She's spinning out. Are you okay?" I didn't answer. Not because I was angry at him. Greg had always been more bystander than participant. But because I didn't want to be pulled back into their orbit. Not even through sympathy. I had said what I needed to say by leaving. Everything else was noise. The next day, a courier left an envelope at Claire's door. I knew because I had arranged it myself. Inside were copies of the finalized deed transfer, bank confirmations, and a short letter from my lawyer stating that any further contact would be documented as harassment. It was never about threats. It was about clarity. By the weekend, the calls had slowed. Only one from Greg, two from a number I didn't know. I let them all go to voicemail. I had bought a tea kettle that whistled softly when it boiled, and I found I liked that sound more than any conversation Claire might try to restart. On Sunday evening, I sat on the balcony again. Lights flickered in other windows. Somewhere below, a couple argued about directions. Farther off, a dog barked, then stopped. And me? I opened my notebook and began to write. Nothing poetic, just simple truths. I left quietly. I sold what I built. I didn't ask for gratitude, only space. She showed up 3 days later. No call, no warning. Just her face, suddenly on the intercom screen. Tight jaw, expensive coat, hair pulled back so sharply it looked like a mask. I was stirring lentils. The kitchen smelled like cumin and lemon. I didn't buzz her in. I just watched the screen. "Mom," she said, staring up at the camera. "I know you're there." I said nothing. The pot simmered behind me. "Can we talk?" Her voice cracked a little, then smoothed out again. "Please. I don't understand what's happening." But she did. She just didn't want it to be real. I let her stand there for 5 minutes. Then I turned the monitor off. The next morning, a handwritten note was slipped under my door. Cream-coloured stationery, her usual looping script. "This is not how family behaves. Whatever your grievances, you could have spoken to us. We could have worked something out. You blindsided us. Please call." No apology, just framing. Control dressed as concern. I tore the note in half and dropped it in the recycling. Not out of anger, out of precision. There was nothing in it I needed to keep. That afternoon, Greg called again. This time I picked up. "She's not well," he said. "She hasn't been sleeping?" "I slept just fine," I said. There was a pause. Then he said, "She's afraid you hate her." I looked out the window. A child across the street was drawing on the sidewalk in bright chalk colours. Suns, flowers, stars. "I don't hate her," I said. "I just don't owe her anything anymore." Greg didn't argue. He never did. He was the kind of man who held his breath in a fight and let the silence decide. "Is there anything I can do?" he asked finally. "Water the rosemary," I said. "She always forgets." He exhaled a sound, like half a laugh. Then he hung up. The following evening, I got a call from the front desk. "A woman's here," they said. "Says she's your daughter. Won't leave." I asked them to send her away, politely, firmly. "She's upset," the clerk said. "She said something about having nowhere to go." I didn't answer right away. Then I said, "Let her sit with that for a while." That night, my phone buzzed. A text from Claire. "You think you're punishing me, but you're just isolating yourself. We were your family. We took you in. You owe us more than this. There it was. That word again. Owe. She had said it once, quietly, during an argument over storage space. You're lucky we let you stay rent-free. At the time, I'd let it pass. Told myself she was tired, stressed, snapping without thinking. But now I saw it clearly. She thought the years I gave, the meals, the laundry, the silence, were not gifts. They were debts, ones she had generously chosen to forgive. I turned the phone over and let it buzz on the table, unanswered. That night, I slept soundly. The kettle steamed. The sheets were cool and clean. My room, my home, breathed only with my breath. And outside, somewhere in a different part of the city, my daughter sat alone with a story she could no longer edit. The next envelope wasn't handwritten. It was from a law firm. Inside, a notice. Polite language, veiled threats. Request for mediation regarding improper transfer of family asset. No case number, no legal teeth, just noise in a tailored envelope. I read it once, then again. Then I placed it flat on the table and set a teacup on top of it. It made a fine coaster. The following morning, I received a message from Greg, a voice note, his voice low, strained. She's called everyone. Your sister, the bank, even my parents. Says she's been wronged, betrayed. She keeps asking, how could she do this to me? To her. As if I'd stolen something she built. As if I'd taken her inheritance rather than reclaimed my own heir. I deleted the message. That evening, the apartment was quiet. I made soup, leeks, and potato, something simple. I ate with the window open, letting the sounds of the city hum through. A bus hissed to a stop. Someone played jazz from a third-floor balcony. Somewhere, a child shrieked in delight. I hadn't laughed in days, but I wasn't sad either. I was still. The next attempt came through my building's intercom again. This time, not Claire, a courier. She'd sent a binder, labeled neatly, family assets, notes for discussion. I didn't open it. I carried it to the trash chute and let it fall. 2 hours later, a new message appeared on my phone. You're ruining everything. We can't get approved for the refi without your signature. Do you even understand what this does to us? There it was again. Us. Not once had she said you. Not once had she asked how I was, where I was, if I felt safe or tired or free. Only what I'd cost her. I didn't reply. A day passed, then another. And on the third day, my phone rang at dawn. I was already awake, sipping tea, watching the sky soften from steel to ash. The screen said Claire. I let it ring. She left a voicemail. Her voice was hollow, ragged, the kind of voice someone uses when they've run out of angles. Mum, please call me. I don't know what to say anymore. We can't fix this if you won't even speak to me. Fix. As if this were a leaky pipe. As if silence could be corked and painted over. I stood up, walked to the window. Outside, the sun finally pushed its way through. Pale and cold. But real. She wanted contact. But not clarity. Not truth. She wanted me to fold. Instead, I folded a towel, hung it neatly on the oven handle, and returned to my tea. No one ever tells you that freedom is boring sometimes. But quiet boredom after years of noise, that's its own kind of luxury. She began calling other people. I know this because my sister Marlene, who I hadn't spoken to in nearly a year, left me a voicemail 2 days ago. Her voice, brisk, clipped, dusted with that old Midwestern judgment. Claire called me. She's very upset. I don't know what's going on between you two, but honestly, Jerry, selling the condo without telling her, that seems extreme. I didn't respond. What would I say? That silence is only extreme to people who've never lived with it pressing on their chest for years. That disappearing is only shocking when you never noticed someone fading in the first place. Instead, I opened my window, watered the mint, watched the city move on without us. By Thursday, the rumours had begun. Claire's neighbour, a woman I used to see at the market, the one who always wore turtlenecks even in July, apparently asked her, "So, I heard your mum just vanished?" Claire said I'd had a breakdown, told them I was unwell and making irrational decisions, said I might be manipulated, said I wasn't acting like myself. But she was wrong. I was acting more like myself than I had in years. The following morning, Maggie, the realtor, forwarded another voicemail. Claire had called her pretending to be me, trying to clarify the sale. Maggie's assistant caught it quickly. "The voice was too different," she said. "She used your full name, but stumbled on the middle initial. She didn't even know the date of purchase." Maggie had replied firmly, professionally. "Miss Collins authorized the sale in full legal capacity. All documents have been notarized and filed. There is no error. The matter is closed." When Maggie relayed it to me, she added, "She sounded like someone who just realized the game's over." I nodded, not out of pride, out of recognition. Because that's what it was, wasn't it? A game. Claire had built a whole life on the assumption that I was a fixture, static, unchanging, that I would be there, always there. Folding her towels, stirring soup, fading with grace. But I hadn't faded. I had documented, waited, acted. Greg called again that evening. This time, he left a message that didn't sound like strategy. It sounded like regret. "She's unraveling. I think. She thought you'd never leave. I should have said something earlier. I should have seen it." There was a pause. Then, softer. "We're being asked to vacate. The new owner gave us a deadline. She doesn't know where we'll go." I sat with that for a long time. Not because I doubted my decision. I didn't. But because I needed to remember something vital. I had not done this to her. I had done this for me. For every quiet meal. For every swallowed thought. For every time I heard, "You're lucky we let you stay." I didn't respond to Greg's message. I simply made my dinner, poured a small glass of wine, and turned on the radio. Classical hour. Violins. A cello. Something soft and low and full. And for the first time in years, I set the table for one and thought, how lucky I am that I remembered who I was before she forgot. The knock came at 9:03 p.m. I hadn't been expecting anyone, but I knew. Somehow, I knew before I even checked the intercom. I paused the kettle and walked slowly to the panel near the door, pressed the screen. Claire. No sunglasses this time. No polished coat. Just a worn sweater, hair unbrushed, eyes rimmed with red. She didn't speak into the camera. She just stood there, holding a small overnight bag in one hand and her phone in the other like it was a talisman. I didn't buzz her in. Instead, I turned off the screen and walked back to the kitchen. The kettle had begun to whistle again. I poured my tea, mint, as always, and let it steep. 3 minutes later, the intercom buzzed again. Then her voice, low and raw. "Mom," she said, "please, I have nowhere to go." It wasn't a performance. I'd seen her perform. This was different, smaller, frayed. "I didn't think you'd actually do it. Sell it. Leave. I thought you were bluffing." Silence. I didn't understand. I didn't understand how far I'd gone. I closed my eyes, let her words hang there like laundry still damp. I was angry. I said terrible things. I treated you like furniture. She paused. I could hear her breathing. the little catches in her throat she used to get as a child after crying. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm so, so sorry. Please let me in. Just for a little while. I don't want money. I need a place to land." I didn't move. Not from coldness, but because I knew what she wanted. Not shelter, not warmth, not tea and a chair. She wanted reversal, undoing. But I wasn't her mother anymore in the way she expected. I was a woman who had remembered the cost of forgetting herself. I stepped onto the balcony. The night air was crisp. She saw me then, looked up like a child caught in a storm. "Please," she called softly. "I don't know where else to go." I didn't speak, not right away. Then, after a long breath, I said the words I'd been saving. "Don't ever think you can trick an old woman, especially your own mother. Not twice." Her face fell, not in anger, but in something deeper, recognition. She nodded, once, slowly, then stepped back from the gate. I turned, walked back inside, pulled the curtains closed. She didn't knock again. That night, I slept deeply, not with triumph, but with stillness. The kind that comes only when the weight of everyone else's comfort is no longer your burden to carry. In the morning, I crushed a mint leaf between my fingers, let the scent rise warm and green into the quiet. And I remembered what she never did. That mothers don't leave because they stop loving. They leave when the love is no longer safe. By Monday, the city had resumed its rhythm. Trash trucks groaned down the avenue. A man in a red windbreaker smoked on his fire escape. Somewhere downstairs, someone played old soul records loud enough that the bass thumped faintly through the pipes. And me. I swept the balcony, watered the mint, wiped the table. The phone didn't ring. Claire had gone quiet, maybe out of pride, maybe fatigue, or maybe she finally understood that no reply was coming, that there was no script left to rewrite. I didn't feel victorious. I felt proportional, like everything had slid back into the place where it belonged, not perfect, but aligned. I walked to the bank that afternoon. Nothing fancy, just to see the balance, print a statement, hold the confirmation in my hand. The teller smiled and asked if I wanted a paper copy. I nodded. "Property sale?" she asked, polite curiosity in her voice. I smiled back. A long time coming. Back home, I placed the printout in the same drawer where John's watch still rested. The numbers weren't the point. The fact that they were mine, that was everything. At sunset, I sat on the balcony, tea in hand, soft sweater over my shoulders. Below, the lights came on in staggered rows, like a quiet orchestra warming up. I thought about what I had given, not just to Claire, but to life. 37 years of marriage, 3 jobs over my lifetime, none glamorous, all steady. A child raised with scraped knees, kissed, and fevers monitored with cool cloths. 1,000 small dinners, 1,000 quiet forgivings. No one claps for that. They don't teach daughters what it looks like when a mother empties herself without asking for applause. They only notice when the silence ends. My neighbour, a retired librarian named June, waved from her balcony. We'd begun saying hello in the mornings, exchanging leftover muffins, stories about the building's odd plumbing. She called me Jerry, like we'd been friends for years. "You look peaceful tonight," she called across the gap. "I am," I said, and meant it. After she went back inside, I stayed a while longer, watched the windows light up across the avenue, thought about all the homes where someone's mother might be folding towels she was never thanked for. I made a small mental note then, not a vow, just a quiet plan, that this money, this life I'd reclaimed, would not go to waste, not on cruises, not on spite, but on something better. something that would mean my silence hadn't been for nothing, because that was the truth beneath all of it. I had loved them, fiercely, endlessly. I had loved past the point of fairness, past dignity even, until the day I realized love given without respect is just labor. And I had labored enough. Now it was time to build something, not to prove a point, but to remember that I still could. The building wasn't much to look at. 4 units stacked in faded brick, with a sagging stoop and weeds curling between the cracks of the sidewalk. But I saw it and knew. The same way I once knew John was the one. The same way I'd known Claire wouldn't call for a week. And then knock. It had good bones. The agent seemed puzzled. Most folks your age ask about assisted living, not walk-ups with drafty windows. I'm not most folks, I said. He smirked. Cash buyer? I nodded. No mortgage, no inspections, just clean title and space to breathe. I signed the offer that afternoon. Back at the apartment, I sat with a cup of tea and the faint sound of sirens in the distance. I didn't feel reckless. I felt grounded. The next morning, I called Maggie, told her I needed a contractor, a plumber, someone good with paint and patience. I'm not flipping it, I said. I'm shaping it. For resale. For refuge. She didn't ask more, just texted me 3 names and said, "You're doing something good." It took 6 weeks. New locks, fresh paint, soft yellows and greens, nothing sterile. Curtains that caught the light. A communal kitchen with deep drawers and real wood cabinets. I bought second-hand furniture that still had a soul. Chairs with worn arms, a rocker that creaked like it had stories to tell. And in the front window, I hung a simple sign, Haven House. No one here proves their worth to stay. That was the whole rule book. No applications, no interviews, just women who needed peace. The first was Lorraine, 72, sharp as salt, with knees that didn't bend but eyes that saw everything. Her son had remarried, and the new wife had made it clear she wasn't running a nursing home. Then came Naomi, widowed twice, quiet hands, once a florist. She brought dried lavender in a tin box and wept the first night, because no one had asked what I wanted for dinner in years. By week 3, there were 4 of us. We shared meals, took turns playing records, left notes on the fridge like old roommates. One morning, I found a sticky note on my tea tin. "You make the best quiet." I smiled, left a note back. It steeped in silence. We weren't trying to be saints, just trying not to disappear. Haven House wasn't beautiful in the magazine sense, but it was beautiful in the way old arms around your shoulders are, warm, familiar, certain. Word began to spread. A social worker emailed. "Is this real?" she asked. "Free?" I said yes. Room and board covered, as long as we all shared the space like we meant it. She sent 2 more names, then 3. I kept a waiting list. On Thursdays, we cooked together. On Sundays, we sat with tea and told stories that hadn't been heard in years. Not because no one cared, but because no one remembered to ask. I never talked about Claire, not out of shame, just because this wasn't her space. It wasn't about her anymore. It was about the women who'd been told they were in the way. One night, Lorraine said, "You built this because someone called you useless, didn't you?" I stirred my tea. "Yes," I said. "And because I believed it, for too long." She nodded. "Well, not anymore." We clinked mugs, and I felt something shift. Not closure, just continuity. It happened on a Tuesday. Quiet, like most real things do. I was in the front room of Haven House, watering the potted basil Naomi had coaxed into thriving. Lorraine was out back arguing with the handyman about porch paint, and Ruth, our newest resident, was asleep in the rocker, a paperback resting gently against her chest. The doorbell rang. I wiped my hands and opened it. Claire. No makeup, no coat, just a grey sweatshirt and that overnight bag again, worn now, the corners frayed. She didn't speak right away. "I'm not here to stay," she said softly. I nodded, stepped aside. She didn't come in, just stood there on the step. "I saw the article," she said. "About the house. Someone posted about it, a place for older women who've been forgotten." Her voice caught on that word. "I didn't know you could do something like this," she added. "I didn't either," I said. A pause. Then, "I wanted to hate you," she said, not looking at me. But the longer I sat with it, the more I realized, you just finally did what I always thought I was too important to prevent. I didn't reply. Let her sit with her own weight. "I don't want anything," she said. "I just wanted you to know that I've been thinking about everything. And I was wrong." Still, I said nothing. Because sorry isn't the end of things. It's only the start, if it's real. She reached into her bag, pulled out something wrapped in tissue. A teacup, my old one, cracked near the rim but still intact. "I found it when we moved out," she said. "I kept it. I don't know why." She held it out to me, like an offering. I took it. Not to forgive, not to fix, just to hold the moment between us like something fragile. Then she turned and walked down the steps into a car I hadn't seen idling across the street. She didn't look back. Inside, Ruth had stirred. "Who was it?" she asked groggily. "Just an old story," I said. And it was. Later that night, I washed the cup, set it to dry beside the others. I didn't place it on the shelf. I left it out, not as a monument, but as proof. Some things don't need to be put away to stop hurting. They just need to be seen. That week, we took in 2 more women, sisters, both over 70, both evicted when their nephew sold the house without telling them. They arrived with plastic bags and soft voices. We set 2 places at the table, made room in the linen closet, showed them how the kettle worked. They cried the first night, then slept for 10 hours straight. That's what Haven House does. It doesn't fix the past. It gives it a place to stop running. I don't tell this story because I want revenge. I tell it because I want recognition. I tell it for the women who sit through birthdays uninvited, who eat soup alone on holidays, while their children post group photos online. For those who fold blankets no one thanks them for. For those who were once the sun around which everything spun, until they became an afterthought. I was one of them, until I wasn't. And if you've read this far, maybe you were too. Maybe you still are. So let me say this clearly. You're not invisible. You're not too late. You are not the problem. You are the reason everything held together, and the reason it can still begin again. We don't scream here. We don't beg. We don't break windows or leave rage in voicemail boxes. We reclaim, quietly, completely. And we write it down, so no one can ever say it didn't happen. So if you have your own story, your own silence that deserves a voice, stay with us. You're not alone anymore. Subscribe to Grandma's Untold Stories. Here, we don't just survive, we outlive.